Good morning and welcome back to the Prepared Mind channel. I am John. I am the host. You guys are the guests with the most brains. You kind of help keep me leveled and keep me pointed in the right direction. I really appreciate all of your input, your comments, how you help each other, and supporting the channel through guerrilla funding on Patreon, and also through watching and putting up with commercials on YouTube. That helps pay the bills, literally. So, this topic, this SHTF topic, is about how political movements, social movements, economic movements play themselves out. In other words, how they are introduced, utilized, gain speed, momentum, support, and then they start to wane and go away. Interestingly and not surprisingly, the Prepared Mind Network is growing and expanding. People are excited about what it is we are doing. We are taking control of our own lives. We are not accepting the spoon-fed BS. And we are getting ready and prepared, which empowers us as individuals. This is fascinating. Something mainstream people don't understand is, as a prepper, you empower yourself instead of relying on others in an unhealthy fashion. You know, we all have to rely on each other a little bit, but how healthy is it for you? How good is it for you financially, psychologically, socially, you know, in all ways, economically, having to rely on others? It's hard to escape 100%, and maybe it's not even a good idea to escape others 100%. But the more you rely on yourself, the stronger you are as an individual in all ways that are important. So, movements come and then they lose steam, right? What I want to get into is how they lose it, how they gain it, how they lose their momentum, they lose their influence, they lose their power. It is just critical to see how this game works out. They play themselves out. Now, it's my belief that if you have a system, an economy, an idea, a political movement that is logically based, that is a successful model, meaning it can sustain itself, then it will sustain itself. When something is based on a lie, exploitation, in other words, it takes advantage of people, it takes advantage of a situation. Anytime something does that, it plays itself out faster. In other words, it's not sustainable. And we've got some great examples of what isn't sustainable. Unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of things right now being forced to be examined for their sustainability, right? As this system comes down, as we wind down into shit hitting the fan, we're going to see sustainability issues in a great many things. Our economy, our political system, our legal system, our social system are all showing signs of both, well, I'm just going to say graphic or graphic is a good way to put it, but extreme fatigue. In other words, they teeter on the point of failure quite a bit. And I hate to use the word extreme. I was trying to avoid it. But it applies. Some things have extreme fatigue. For example, our economy. It's being held up and propped up with hopium, bullshit, and free money being generated and pumped wherever it's needed to make sure a collapse doesn't happen. That is where we're at. And I could spend hours talking about it and producing facts, but I'm just going to talk here. That's one example. Socially, and socio-politically, we are at in a position of extreme fatigue. When we meaning humans throughout history, get to a point of extreme fatigue, bad things happen. Social chaos, political collapse, revolutions. There was extreme fatigue in the American Revolution. People were fatigued with England's bullshit. There was extreme fatigue in France. The people of France were sick of knowing that their 1% and the king, right, their aristocracy, were living like kings while everyone else was suffering. They were getting poorer and poorer, sick, etc. So you see revolutions. Our system is sitting on a number of different extremes, which has caused me to run to the mic, run to the camera and say, shit's going to hit the fan. We need to be prepared. And what is coming up, whenever there's fatigue in a system, ideas are put forward to see if they can substitute or replace what exists and create a better situation, right? That is what people do, but it is also what those in power do. They have been trying for years to convert the system that we had, constitutional government, into a form that the new aristocracy, we'll just call them the one percenters, the bankers and corporate owners and aristocratic families that have moved behind shell corporations to continue to exert their influence and power, right? They're trying to find a system that we're willing to accept, but one which they can control and dominate and not be questioned, right? They want their power to be unquestionable. And so they've got a police state system in place. It's there right now. Right? They've got a monetary system in place. They have a political structure in place, but it's all failing, right? It's on the point of extreme fatigue. So let's look at how they're trying to get control back, and then we can examine how it's failing and how we need to be aware as preppers of what is going on. I've got an article here from summit.news. And it's "Stop the Lies" is the quote. In Canada, they are being attacked by this Greta Thunberg, 16-year-old girl from Sweden, who came over and lectured everybody and is lecturing Europe, Russia, the United States of America, the United Nations as a body, Canada, everywhere she can. She's lecturing everyone, telling them how bad and wrong they are, right? And so this isn't just a lecture. It is a social political movement attempting to gain fundamental ground. In other words, to be used as the foundation and basis for a new control system to replace the one that has extreme fatigue. The problem is it is based on lies. It is morally failing because it's false. It's a false premise, and therefore it does what? It loses momentum. It is in and of itself played out. It came, it was introduced, it got some traction, and then it's being rejected because it fails. Canada has had it. Right? There was a mural, not a billboard or a picture, but a mural is where someone paints on a wall. Mural of her. It's been defaced in both English and French. And it says, "This is oil country." They've had it with this girl because she gets to come here and lecture. Now, the problem with their presumption is that climate change is taking place, that it's bad, that it's caused by humans, primarily white people in Western culture, because she doesn't go after China. She goes after white people and says, your standard of living is too high and your countries are bad. Meanwhile, she doesn't look at her own country, Sweden, and seeing it for what it is. So she is already played out. And this idea that they're using, climate change, and then who is their spokesman? An exploited, mentally, she has mental problems. She has severe mental problems. I believe Asperger's. She has depression. She has other psychological issues. And she's being exploited by her parents, by a political system, and by a international, worldwide political movement for climate change that is being suggested as the model to replace the model we have today. Right? The Green New Deal is the same thing. We need to go to zero carbon footprint, even though plants need carbon. What, are we going to starve all the world's plants of their carbon dioxide? You know, why do we want to starve the world's plants? Anyways, I know that the whole thing is impossibly ridiculous, but it shows how it is played out. There is now blowback, negative response coming from around the world. And it's not just Canadians. And Canadians are the nicest people, right? I've made jokes about them in the past. You know, they're cannibals, Canada, cannibal, right? They'll eat you if they have to. Canadians are the nicest people. They're very much like our friends in the UK that are polite and will discuss things to the finest point in a debate or argument or discussion because that's their personality. They're very nice. But they've had it in Canada, which is surprising, but I'm glad to see it's played itself out. It's already played out. In Germany, this is what, this is not just a Canadian issue. German drivers have bumper stickers that say, "Fuck you, Greta." That's right. Germans are saying, "Fuck you, Greta." Right? This is our country, our standard of living, our life. We will clean our environment. We will lower carbon footprint, but we're not going to live like hooligans. We're not going to live like filthy third worlders. Right? We've got to find a way to balance the requirements of keeping a clean environment, but at the same time, we're not going to kill ourselves for you, Greta. So that's what's going on. She has played out. Another article or story I want to bring up is Under Armour. The people that make t-shirts and shit like that for active wear, sportswear. The CEO of that company steps down 1 year after their #MeToo crisis. What did they do wrong? They were spending company funds at a strip joint. They're helping single moms out. What's wrong with that? Oh, it's because of the sexual nature. Here is another movement that is designed to change a paradigm we have that they have identified, and they're substituting theirs. This feminist #MeToo empowerment, and let's unempower men and call men bad and evil and toxic and see what kind of traction it's gained. And then if it's sustainable, in other words, is it based on a lie or is it based on truth? Is it sustainable or is it false and it'll fail? Well, it's failing. I'm really surprised to see him step down. And he did so and the stock value went up. Well, the reason the stock value went down wasn't because of #MeToo. It was because of the economy slowing down. Bad business decisions on their part slowing down. Poor sales in retail across the board. Companies are downsizing, cutting labor, cutting factories out, reducing inventories, reducing production in order to come and find a place where they're profitable. But, so by saying, the stock went up, see, that's the evidence we need that #MeToo works. No, the stock went up because the stock market's heavily manipulated. Investors will find any reason to jump on board anything because they have a fear of missing out. So that part is very similar to Overstock.com. That CEO stepped down because of the controversy he created, or got tangled up in, rather, and he didn't want it affecting the company. So this Mr. Plank steps down at Under Armour. The fella at Overstock stepped down and the stock went up because he was involved sexually with a Russian spy in an attempt to frame Trump. And he was like, we'll remove the political element. Wisely so, it helped, right? Plank wisely steps out of the way. But is this #MeToo playing out? The answer, I think, is yes. I'm surprised he did this. But he didn't do it. He didn't step down at Under Armour because of the Me Too movement. He was like, fuck you. I'm staying. It's my business. You're not going to chase me out. So it's being presented that he's stepping out of the way because of the #MeToo movement. But it's not the case. That is playing itself out. When people see the radical, illogical, irrational, ridiculous, hypocritical nature of these substitute movements which are trying to build an overall socialist platform, they are playing themselves out. To the majority, that is. To the majority, and that's where we're going with this. Before we get there, I want to finish up with this Under Armour thing. After the #MeToo movement hit Under Armour in 2018, we're almost at 2019. They got hit in 2018. Mainly because lower-level staff, women staff to be exact, complained about the highly toxic male environment in management. See, that was a year and a half, 2 years ago, where this highly toxic male environment was, and it's been substituted with a highly toxic man-hating environment, which is false. It's false. It can't work. It's unsustainable. It doesn't work. We're seeing that, right? It has come and it is now waning. It's going away. We've got all of these leftist movements. Now, what I did say is they failed with the majority of people. In other words, they're not sustainable because they aren't being supported by a big enough part of the body politic, right? So, where am I going with this for shit hitting the fan? There are still very small sectors, but they're highly motivated. These climate change activists, the Me Too feminist activists, the Antifa social communist activists, right? The LGBTQI, et cetera, activists. They're a very small part, and that too is going to lose. It is coming down because the LGBTQI cry that they're not being treated fairly, that they need more and more, is going to go by the wayside. If you remember the American with Disabilities Act, where everything had to be created around the world of disabled people, well, they pushed it so far that they pissed a lot of people off. Now, some things continued to stay, and they were sustainable. Should bathrooms have a stall in them that's bigger? Yeah, it helps not only people with disabilities, but also people who just like a large toilet area if they go to a public bathroom. They want to spread out and do their business, right? There are some advantages to it. People who aren't considered disabled really enjoy walking up a ramp instead of stairs. It makes it easier for them. The elderly that aren't disabled, but they're elderly. It's just an ease thing. So it's helped in a lot of ways. That's an example of a movement that got ridiculous and then got pushed off to the side. You know, it became unsustainable. It played itself out. The LGBTQ thing is going to play itself out. People are going to get sick and tired of it. I'm already sick and tired. In fact, I was sick and tired of it, 8 years ago. I was sick and tired of it. It's just stupid. But it's going to play itself out. Unfortunately, the radicals in each group are the ones that are willing to attack. They're willing to dox people. Right now, politically, what just happened in the last few days? It came out that there is a exposure of Trump supporters by maps with names, numbers, addresses, places of work. Who knows what they're putting out, trying to show that we're going to come and get you and punish you. And the more outspoken you are, like I am, the more you're going to be attacked. But they are going to play themselves out. They're not sustainable. But they are vicious in their little pieces. Right? As I said, the Prepared Mind Network is continuing to grow because places like this network, the R Syndicate, other channels, they are putting out their opinions, but they're sustainable opinions. You know, do we need the right to protect ourselves? Yes. Otherwise, you end up with situations like they have in Mexico and other third world nations where gangs or the gang called the government exert an authoritarian and violent control over the people. So we need to maintain our ability to control ourselves. And it's very appealing to a broad section of the population, and it can grow. There's room to grow as long as it's done in a responsible manner and we understand it. The Constitution was done broadly. The Bill of Rights was done broadly. It's sustainable. It lasted hundreds of years, and it is something that is supported by people. So when they try and say, the era of guns is over and we need gun control, that has come and risen, and it's played out. And then they'll have more mass shootings and try and raise interest, but it plays itself out because it is a false premise. The idea of prepping is not a false premise because of so many and so much of our entire system. Again, economic, political, military, social, everything we have is teetering because it has been manipulated and bastardized, literally so badly that it's teetering. It is extremely fatigued, and they're trying to replace it with these other systems, which have proven false in the past, or they demonstrate their falsity to us very quickly, much like Greta Thunberg. People are like, wait a minute, you want me to live like a barbarian in a hut up in cold-ass Canada because a 16-year-old girl is the spokesperson who shamed a bunch of adults, right? They exploited this idiot She's an idiot. Because she's not thinking with her own brain. She's regurgitating someone else's information. Idiot. And she doesn't have a degree. She isn't fully educated. She's not capable of independent thought, analysis, conclusion. She's not capable of testing theory and hypothesis. She's a kid. She's an idiot being shown to be some great moral leader. It's not. It's false. It's fake. It goes away. But again, there are sections as we get closer to shitting the fan where the radical of each group, animal rights groups, people who are environmentalists are very radical. We have extremist groups now coming out that are anti-human. They're blatantly, openly anti-human, and they want to kill off humans, and they're going to do what they can to make that happen. This is why another reason we need to be prepared is because as shit hits the fan, these little independent groups, which have proven to be played out, maintain a radicalized core. And that radicalized core is violent at its nature. The radical socialist communist element in government is very big and strong. It's a bigger chunk. It's not a little chunk. It's a big chunk. And that can cause a bigger conflagration. Shit, it's the fan style. Because there's more of them and they're radical. And the more power they get, the more they're willing to use violence to attain their means. Which shows you once again that they're tyranny-based, it's unsustainable, and it's false. And the majority of people will reject them. But we've seen in times past, Russia, China, other countries where there's problems. It's an unsustainable, it's a severely fatigued system. The people are unhappy, a revolution takes place, and some small group takes over. And in the case of Russia and China, it was communists. And they put in a total authoritarian, totalitarian, violent regime that used the military and military power to condemn any idea that's separate or distinct from them and hurt the people, control the people until that system fails. It has failed. They're trying to do it again here. We need to be prepared with food, water, shelter, clothing, medicine, means of self-defense, because it's easy to see where they're going with this. It's easy for us to see as preppers what it is they're doing. And what we're doing is sustainable. Being self-sufficient mentally with preps, it's sustainable, right? Having a good foundation morally on which you stand, whether it has to do with your faith or your secular notion of what government should be, we have a good foundation. Therefore, it's sustainable. The idea of prepping will continue until we get a country that is once again on firm foundations, not fatigued foundations, but firm foundations. That's what the Constitution was about. Constitution is like foundation. Constitution is what our nation was founded upon, right? And the basis of the foundation was faith, morality, a declaration of independence. The ideas embodied in that were the basis for the revolution, were the basis for the Constitution, right? That's down there on the big bottom of everything. And once you have that in place, you can start to build other systems which are equally sustainable. Right now we have crumbling foundations because the Constitution has been attacked. Morality has been attacked, right? Faith has been attacked. All of the things that we rely on in our lives personally have been attacked on an incredible national scale. And they're trying to make those things get some traction, but they're failing. They're played out. They're going down. Greta Thunberg is going to disappear. She won't even be a footnote within the climate change movement in 20 years or 30 years because it will fail. And she may be more of a footnote in regards to how they exploited children in general, to scare children, to try and get children to influence their parents so that they do what? Sign on to a new green socialist deal. That's where the footnote's going to exist, is here was a failing, played out game using children, exploiting them for political purposes. It's disgusting. That's why it's failing. That's why it's already played out. The science has never been there for climate change. It's played out. The science, by the way, of multiculturalism, the social science of multiculturalism, has even been called a failure. I believe abject failure, but let's just go with failure, by none other than Angela Merkel of Germany, who after 20, 25, 30 years of trying this multiculturalism crap out, has finally conceded that it's a failure, that it didn't help them, that it's hurt them. That's a long time to try an idea. Right? Now, America was considered a melting pot. It's a much later idea that came way after the Constitution. But this idea that other people could come from other countries and make ours better. Yeah, but it's by assimilating and accepting our culture, our laws, our foundation as the one that works. You can't introduce Sharia law over the Constitution. Right? It's you can't feed poison to animals and expect them to live. They're discovering that multiculturalism is poison, and it is now playing itself out. The idea of Trump pulling out of Syria, and Turkey is going to reintroduce all of those fleeing millions, hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of immigrants who flee war zones are going to be sent home. They're not going to be released to flood into Europe. What Trump has done and is doing with Putin and other leaders is try and figure out how to get these people back to their homes. It's an interesting thing because multiculturalism is playing out. This idea of military coup and nation building that the CIA has been trying for decades and decades has continued to fail and fail. Hopefully it is played out also. But because it was done in secret, because it was done for nefarious reasons, because the media has lied to us about it, and we didn't understand what was going on as a people. I understood, you understood, but the people didn't understand how these countries were being overthrown, coup d'etat, by our CIA, by Mossad, by MI6, and having substitute governments introduced that were friendly to our country. Instead of free trade agreements with other countries and appealing to them in that way, they went this other sneaky route. Well, it's unsustainable and it is playing itself out. Now we're getting out of these countries, and the new model, there's going to be a new model. What it is, I don't know for sure. What I do know is that things that are playing out are going to go away, or they're going to create mass conflict because there has been so much corrosion, negativity, harm done to our economies and our social structures, our education system. All of that has been damaged so badly that even though it's played out, we're going to have problems, conflict. You got to pay for what's been done. Shit hitting the fan. Hot spots, shit hits the fan light. Let's hope it stays down at that level. We don't go full on Captain Caveman, Mad Max, SHTF, revolution, fight, nuclear war, etc. I don't want that. So the hopium I have is that we're preppers, we're prepared, and that as bad things happen, we deal with it and get through it and get to the other side. But I am going to address other issues in other videos about what I see happening and what is going on. But until then, you guys be cool. Chance favors the prepared mind is yours. Godspeed to all.